My name is Fred Matt, and I live in St. Ignatius, Montana. I lived here on the Flathead Indian Reservation all my life. I'm a member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. I've worked for the tribe for 21 years and currently work in the Wildland Recreation Program. It seems like that I managed to fill up my day pretty well. I not only work full-time for the tribe in the recreation program. As I said, I had a part-time backhoe business that took up basically evenings and weekends, and but I'm also having a family you can't get away from. Not that you would want to, but there's a lot of time that your family requires, such as baseball, basketball, sports in general. I have 7 daughters and 2 left at home, and so they managed to keep me busy and keep my life in somewhat perspective of helping them with their sports and following them around. So I guess that the extra time that I did have was between midnight and 6 in the morning, something like that. A lot of our members. I served 2 terms on the tribal council, and there again, it demands a lot of effort to try to get familiar with all the different aspects of the tribal government, and so you could make competent and good decisions on the issues that you needed to address. In general, I think a business such as a backhoe business or construction business or any business, I think you have to prove yourself, and you have to get a reputation, and that you know, I think that's the important part. I mean, as people start to see some of the work and the quality of the work that I had done, I think there again the word of mouth and the fact that you start to build a good reputation, I think is the important factor. The things that I've done for many years, and it's something that I feel like that it's part of my responsibility as a community member to share gifts, I guess, or personal gifts that we may have with our community, and I've done that in my music ministry. It's interesting because I've played music all my life, and my family has a musical background. Most of us all play an instrument of some sort, and so when I started out playing music, I played with my cousins in a band 30-some years ago. But more recently, I guess I feel like that my music ability has been something that the whole community can benefit from, in the way of, we play a lot of weddings, funerals, and I play 2 weekends a month at the church that I go to. And I feel that my music ministry is probably more fulfilling now than it ever has been, personally, and just, you know, just being able to help, especially in the area playing for funerals, is you know, it's a time that people are grieving, and it's a time that people need a little extra support, and that's I feel that's what we provide for them. So, and we enjoy doing that, being able to help as a community. I'm trying to divorce myself from the backhoe business, not because it wasn't a success. I really enjoyed the time that I operated my little backhoe business, but it was time to move on, and anyway, so I don't even know how to word it, but I was the reason why I was in the backhoe business is because I've operated equipment all my life in the jobs that I've done, and so it was a natural, I think. But the other area that I've spent a lot of years at is in the recreation program for the tribe, and so that's brought me in my job to respecting and also working in the wilderness, our beautiful Mission Mountain wilderness, and on the Flathead River. And so I've grown to, not grown, I've always really appreciated the outdoors. I've always been a outdoors type of a person ever since I was a little kid. I've enjoyed camping, fishing, hunting, backpacking, canoeing, floating, you name it. I mean, the list goes on. And I think the person that I bought the raft company from recognized that I was somebody that took a great interest in the river, and it's been said, and he's told me that he thought that out of anybody that he knew within the tribal, within the tribe, that he would like to see take over the raft company when he decided to move on. I was one of the ones that he thought of, and it's something that just didn't crop up overnight either. We've been talking for several years. We'd get together, seemed like every year when Howie would come back from his other job, which is he works part-time in Utah for a ski resort down there. I call him a snow scientist, but anyway, he does that in the winter months, and then he'd come up here and work the raft company in the 3 months in the summer. Each year, at least the last 3 years, he's called me. He didn't advertise the business for sale. Maybe word of mouth, maybe the few individuals that he thought would be somebody that would be able to take over the raft company. Maybe there is others, but anyway, he would call me up in about April when he'd come from Utah and say, "Hey, let's get together and talk about the raft company. I think you ought to have it," you know. So we'd get together at 4B's and have a cup of coffee and talk about where I was at in my life and what he wanted to do, and then that was it. And then he'd go through the summer and then he'd be off. But this last spring, not this April, but last April, '96, we got together for the same cup of coffee, and it just it was amazing how it seemed that it was the timing was right. Well, basically he just said, "Well, it's time. I've got to move on, and if it isn't you, it'll be somebody else." And so we start getting serious about talking about price, and he and I said, "Well, work up what you think you need to have for it, and equipment, and what you have, and we'll start talking." And so that it actually took from that time. That was in April. When we realized both of us were serious about putting this together, we thought we'd have it done by June before the season started. And unfortunately, when you start negotiating and trying to sort through your tax, or not tax, your financial person beating up on his financial person to come up with an agreement on what's good for both of you. It took from April till there was 2 weeks left in August when we finally signed the buy-sell. Howie, the former owner of the Polson Glacier Raft Company, came up with the price that he started with. There was a couple of basic things that he had used. The equipment, for one. And how he came up with the $121,000 that he wanted for the business. Part of that, I think about $90,000 of that was equipment. And then there was an area that took some serious negotiating and looking at, because what he did is he took replacement value, and that means that if I went out today and if I bought 8 Avon rafts with ooring frames and oars and life jackets and everything that it took to get on that river, that's what he valued the equipment at. And of course I said, well, you got to add in a little bit of a depreciation or just, these rafts are 10 years old. I mean, what is their life expectancy? And I'm sure he knew that I was going to counter with that. So, well, actually, it was kind of interesting. That was only one part that I looked at, that I had to pencil out and come up with a value of my own. The other important element in this is his permit in general, and I'll get back to where I'm going with this. But the important element, like I said, is the permit itself, and that's somewhat kind of hard to value, because without the permit, he's dead in the water, so to speak, literally. So he started with $121,000, what he thought that the raft company was worth. And once we got done running our numbers with my accountant, Julie, and what we thought it was worth was $75,000. So there was a big range. And so when I gave him the heartbreaking news that I'd given $75,000, and this was based on his last 3 years' income statements and what I valued the equipment at, with the fact that it was some of the equipment was 10 years old and had to be replaced, and the buses were, not 1980, 85 models, but 1967 and 71 models, and that they may need to be replaced in the near future. Anyway, actually, he didn't respond very well at first, because I think he was really set on this around 120 or 100,000 plus amount. But I think the more he heard my position and how I arrived at what I thought it was worth, I think maybe it made him think that, yeah, okay, well, I think you do have a good point. And in some respects, figures don't lie once you run them. I mean, it had to be there. I mean, the cost of paying the debt off, and for instance, we figured in the cost of my wages is if I walked away from Wildland Recreation Program and worked for the raft company for 3 months, I would have to be paid a salary for that. So we wrote that in, and there was many other factors, but conditions of the buy-sell with the former owner. you got to make sure that you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted up front, because there's a lot of things that can change, that may change, that if you don't fully think through all of that. And then interpreting, getting a person to comply with what that person said they will do for you. You know, some of it's gray area, some of it's blue sky, some of it's so it sometimes it's frustrating. It was frustrating with me dealing on that aspect, and not knowing all of the intricate details that goes into owning a little raft company. I mean, it's just mind-blowing sometimes, the work that's done. The fun part is floating down the river. I'd like to be one of the guides and just get paid for oaring down the river and not worrying about insurance and advertising. And the frustrating part also for me has been the fact that I signed the BuySell last September and give a down payment of $8,000 and have been spending money ever since and not taking a dime in yet. We haven't even got on the river and made a dime yet. One of the frustrating parts about a raft company in general, just the nature of how it works, is in preparation for the raft season. One of the biggest elements that you have to work on is advertising. And so I've owned the company, or at least I signed the BuySell last September and paid a down payment, and like I said earlier, given the final payment yesterday. I've been spending money, and lots of it, and haven't taken a dime in. So, and I could be spending more if I bought every piece of advertisement that was approached. I mean, it's thousands of dollars. But there is another element of it that you can't get away from, because that's literally your bread and butter is advertising and getting in. Make sure that your brochure circulation is getting you the best mileage, and what getting in the travel guides, and because most of your business is based on people who come out here to Montana to vacation. I mean, that's what they come to do. That's one of the good parts about taking over a business that's already been established, is the fact that groundwork was pretty much already laid. And that's part of the blue sky that I bought too. You know, when we arrived, or when Howie arrived at this figure, part of what he was selling is this 10 years of experience in advertising what works and what don't work was part of what he was selling me. And so that aspect of it was good, that I took over a business that was well established, that was already working. Brochures that we had to make new brochures because the name had changed. We're advertising in AAA. There's a AAA ad that comes out in a lot of different magazines. We advertise on the internet. One of the good things about the former owner, I alluded to, that he's in the computers, and he wrote a web page for the bigger Glacier Raft Company, and which I'm still part of that advertisement is still flowing over into our new business, which is Flathead Raft. And in fact, if this student, if he doesn't find the time to do the web page for me, I may get Howie to go ahead and to write one just specific for me. But there's there's all kinds of different advertising that we've done. There's the Missoula magazine comes out every year with activities in the area. Well, there again, I can think of a lot of different people, different individuals that's helped me. And some of them are rather obvious that you need in a negotiation process. When you're dealing with a business, I mean, obviously you're dealing with finances and money. And so my personal accountant that I hired after I figured out that I couldn't use the short form anymore, and when I when I went from just having one job to having a backhoe business and all these other things that cause you to try to handle or try to financially, I don't know how to put it, do your taxes, or anyway. My accountant was one person that was a key player because I showed her the financial statements and the last 3 years' books that Howie had, so that she could run some projections. Because he starts at one, he started at one price with the equipment valued at what he thought that they were worth, with the profits that he's made over the last 3 years. She went through all of that, and then and come up with a figure that she thought that I should counter with. And she was kind of new at this too, so this is kind of the exciting part of it. It fit in with a workshop that she had just recently had attended that kind of talked about valuating businesses, and so she was excited about helping me because she got some real figures and a real business to kind of to look at. So it was fun for her. And then obviously the business assistance office was a big help.
Where's that?
In Pablo at the Salish and Kootenai College. When I was unsure of what I should be asking, what questions I should be asking, what I should be looking at, because some of this is beyond my capabilities, the financial end of it. I would get input from
The business.
yeah, from the business office, assistance office, and then I'd go off and find out what I needed to know. And actually, Julie, my accountant, also called because she, like I said, was unsure on some of the things that she should be looking at, and she actually got help from the office too. So that was great. Well, the interesting part of the permit, it is a hidden cost that was a good bargaining chip for me, and this is an area I think that I can really be proud that I felt like that there was a lot of support from the tribe and the tribal council, because I think it's their desire to see a tribal member utilize their own resources and manage their own resources and to be successful. And I really felt that. I mean, more than once. And the permit element is one of them, because for the last 2 or 3 years, Howie had a year-to-year permit from the tribal council. he'd go in April, May, and talk about what he did last year and the fees that he'd paid the tribe, and he'd have to renew his permit year to year. And I think in some respects that was purposely set up that way so that if a tribal member did come along, it would be easier for them to, if it was a 5-year permit or a 10-year permit out there, you'd have to wait 10 years, obviously, to get a permit renewed or somebody else to go. There's only one rafting company on the lower Flathead River here on the reservation. And again, that was, I think, intentionally, because I think there is really a legitimate concern about overuse on the river, and that's one of the aspects of this river that I really enjoy and that I feel proud of, because I don't feel like that we're over abusing that river, and you can see all over the country right now on the Colorado, you have to go through a rigorous reservation system to just get on the river in some cases, and so there's been other raft companies that want a piece of the pie that's approached the tribal council in years past, that are operating now on the upper reaches of the Flathead River, and they'd come into the council and wanted a piece of that pie, and the council would always say, no, we've already got one outfitter, guided, a permitted outfitter, and we want to keep it with one. Yeah, I know, we're going to make it. One of the things that I dare not exclude from recognizing, and that's the support, obviously, that I've gotten, not only, and I alluded to the support I got from the tribe and co-workers and my boss Tom McDonald, and I mentioned the business assistance office, but and it's not last but not least sort of a thing, but my wife Tammy has been incredible. I mean, in fact, I just mentioned the other day that if I didn't have the support from her and the work that she's done, I might have bagged it already, because I mean, there's a lot to do in the off season, believe it or not. We have everything set up on a computer to keep track of the books, and she also takes care of the advance reservations. She sends, every time we get a reservation, she'll send a letter back to whoever made the reservations, thanking them for their, and so she does all the correspondence. She's doing an incredibly amount of the advertising. I mean, she takes care of most of that. She always runs things by me to make sure that we're in sync of correspondence. But basically, she does all the letter writing. She's going to do most of the brochure distribution. If you're in sync, if you have a good relationship, I think it's, in my mind, it's much better having my wife Tammy doing the books, the bulk of it anyway. I mean, there's, she just prepares them so that our accountant is up to speed, and that it isn't such a big job for her to do at the end of the year or quarterly, or she almost, well, she senses when I'm about ready to pull my hair out, and that that I need a little uplift, and a little boost to say, hey, there'll be better days, but it's really been exciting. There's obviously, I've in many ways said there's been ups and downs. It's kind of like the ride down the river, but the rewarding part of it, the personal gratification of of putting it together and seeing it all develop, come together, the excitement of in a couple of weeks it's going to happen. We're going to be jamming down the river, and excitement of all the employees. They could have been, they had to go through a certain amount of uncertainty, I guess, because wondering, well, what's going to be for us. But everybody is just like, at certain times of year, they don't allow any motors on the river, and the geese are nesting, and the waterfowl are using the river for nesting. And there again, that's keeping in mind other parts of life that I think that's very important. And then in the rest of the year, there's a horsepower limit, a 15 horse limit for a boat motor. And so I guess what that does for you is it keeps an array of maybe loud jet boats off the river, so that there again, I think it provides a real quality experience by that. Well, I think in general the tribes are really environmentally conscientious, and I think that not only is evidenced by what they've done on the river, but in other areas. They have the one program, or the one area that I'm most familiar with, is the wilderness, and they set aside 90,000 acres. It's private land. They set that aside for the protection of an area that I think that is just as beautiful as the river, if not more beautiful. It's got there again. It's just this pristine mountainous area on the east end of the reservation that they hold in high regard because of other elements, the wildlife,
What kind of
the
wildlife?
water. Well, there again, there's an array of, and one of the most important species that we have in our wilderness that kind of ties to protecting that area is the grizzly bear. We have a small population of grizzly in the area, and that was one of the main focuses why we set that area aside for its protection. And in fact, we close 10,000 acres off each year just in an area that the grizzly bears congregate, and we don't even allow our own people and our own employees, biologists, to visit the area or try to discourage them from even going in the area so that the bear can be there by on their own without any disturbance. I think Indian people in general, and there's a lot of other people too, I think, that feel this way, that there's other elements in life that we're all connected, and that it's important. I think if we would somehow, we're in a teetering situation. I think if we lost the grizzly bear and some of the animals up in that area, I think we would be telling ourselves that we're not protecting and not doing a good job, as tribal people or whoever, to manage in those areas. I think the efforts that the tribes made to keeping the water quality as it is, unfortunately, water flows downhill, and I hope that some of the things that the tribe is doing and the fact that they belong into a larger Columbia Basin management scheme, I hope that I know that we have influence on what we do here on the reservation, but in the headwaters of the Flathead, we don't totally have control over, but we do have input, and I think just the philosophy of the tribe in general, for years to come, we'll have good, clean, pristine water. The background that I had, or that I have in business, it really did help me because I think some of the decisions are the decisions that you have to make sometimes require a broad knowledge of different things, and sometimes I see council people struggle because they're too narrowly focused in just one aspect of life, and I think the broader perspective, you kind of know what small business people go through, business people in general, and then also I know what the government arm are working within the tribal government, what that requires or entails. So I think it really did help me to be in private business also, because it gave you a perspective of sometimes how difficult it is to be a tribal member and to be successful on their own reservation. Sometimes that's a plus and sometimes that's a minus too. Sometimes it would work for me and sometimes it would work against you. And then on the other hand, I felt like that maybe as a tribe we could support our small business people by having some sort of a loan program to where, I was maybe fortunate. I see, a lot of other people that aren't as fortunate. And the fact that we have, a lot of times, I know tribal members put up their property for collateral. Well, there's a reluctance for a bank to use, tribal property, because they're afraid of what does this mean, this property's in trust. The nice part about this rafting business is the potential that's there, I think, for expansion. I alluded to a little bit about the permit and the advantage that I have as a tribal member because the former owner was very, very narrowly focused in what he could do on the river. And since I took over the raft company, and when I broke the news to the tribal council that it was me that was going to be the new owner, they really supported me, like I said, and I don't want to take that too lightly or make it sound like that it's not a big deal, because it is. And actually, they've kind of opened the door for me to do a lot of expansion, or at least they said, well, let us know what you want to do, and I felt like that they're going to support me. One of the areas that we're thinking about is expanding and doing some overnighters on the river, raft and ride, like some of the other companies have. We're the only game in town, for one thing. Again, I mean, that's kind of unique. And the fact that that I think there's again, you just have to spend time on that, on the river to just experience the awesome beauty of the area, and there's an outfitter here the Chef Guest Ranch, and that's owned by half owned by a tribal member, and we've been talking about maybe and with others about putting together a trip where they would float the whitewater in the morning and maybe horseback ride in the afternoon. It's things that they've done in other areas too. So we talked about that in conjunction with the Native Adventures. I know we've talked about, I told them, I said, well, I think there's a real educational opportunity here because people are just hungry for knowledge about what Indian people are doing or have done, and I think not only you could take advantage of receiving some monetary benefit from that, but also you can teach people about the real story about what Indian people are all about, and the real valued, in my mind, history. And so there's a potential of there again floating the whitewater, and then going on down and setting up a nice encampment and have tribal people come in and talk about not only the history but tell some stories about the area and talk about some of the history of the river or elements of the river, you know, that I think that are unique. One of the things that I've been doing is talking with the Kootenai Resort here in Polson, and there's another entity within the tribe that's been really supportive. They've been, I mean, they've on their own come up with ideas that you know, we can obviously complement each other. They have a lot of groups, large groups that come in for seminars and different workshops, so to speak, and conventions and things like that. And and that's the raft company, the former Glacier Raft of Polson and now the Flathead Raft Company. One of the things that they've always prided themselves into accommodating large groups, and so this fits in well with what our goals are, is to tap into some of the more large groups that the Kootenai Resort get in, and providing them with an activity that I think is really meaningful for the guests, and they seem to always come up with good ways of combining our efforts to support each other. For example, this whole past winter, our office now is set up in our home, and when our 1-800 number, when they ring the 1-800 number, it's transferred to our home, and so when people ask, well, when we come up there to raft next summer, where can we stay? And we'll tell them, well, we have a tribal resort, the Kootenai Resort. It's a Best Western, it's 5-star. It's really a nice place, and in turn, the resort does the same for us also. You know, when people ask what's there to do, well, there's a beautiful whitewater river float, half-day whitewater river trip that you can take advantage of while you're here. So, yeah, it's surprising how many advanced reservations that that's the only, well, not the only, one of the breaths of fresh air that we've had, because some of them, we do encourage them to pay a deposit to secure their reservation, and so we've had quite a few large groups already make deposits to secure their reservation. So that's been kind of a nice element to have right now when I've paid all this money out all fall and all winter for advertising and that. Looking ahead to 7 generations, I think that's a term. It's a concept that we are going to protect that for our children to come. And I think that that's the way people in general should think, and not just one lifetime. What I can get in the short time that I'm here, you know, I think in general we need to think about the resources that we're using and how we use them, and how we're going to preserve them. It ties back to my love for the outdoors. And it's exciting to think that I'm the owner of the company that is on the river, and that I'm a tribal member, and because it's like taking care of your household in my mind. I think that I will be more, not that the former owner didn't do a good job, he did a great job of respecting the river and taking care of it. But I think the fact that I feel like that this reservation is part of me, and that I will even be more conscientious of that. And I think in general, this is my pitch for outfitting, I think in general outfitters will take care of the environment better. In fact, I know the ones I do know do take care of them better, because they know that's their livelihood for one thing. I can't imagine getting tired of it, because there's different water flows, there's different days, there's I don't know, it's kind of hard not to like that experience of going down the river. It adds a little bit of, I mean, the excitement comes from the fact that you can't control the river, that you don't have total control over it, and going over some of the waves, and the fact that your boat is standing straight up sometimes, and you're wondering if it's going to come over backwards, and you're going to be floating down the river, and it's part of the excitement that, you know, that you feel, the awesomeness of the water, I guess, and I don't know, there's just many aspects of it that I think that make it exciting. You have one chance to make it work, so don't take it lightly, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess the similarities in owning the business and floating the river are that you don't know. Sometimes you don't know all the answers, or you don't know what's around the next corner. I mean, obviously, it's almost like a river trip, because there's been ups and downs, and there's been low water and good water, and good times and some hard times, I guess. It's been exciting. I've been frustrated at times, mainly because just dealing with people, I guess, is one of the big factors. Well, I think it was a natural myself. I mean, I don't know. There was a lot of input, and in fact, this was the fun part of working with Howie too. Is he had a lot of great ideas, and he's got a lot of knowledge. He's really experienced. He knows the business well, and he helped me pick the name. But I, you know, obviously think it's a natural, because this is the Flathead Indian Reservation. It's the Flathead River. I mean, why I mean, how could you not call it the Flathead Raft Company?